Alright, I'm going to quickly go through and give a deck profile of my Neo Nectar Premium deck. I've been playtesting this a little bit, doing some test hands and stuff, trying to figure out what the most consistent build of this is. This is a Neo Nectar Legion deck profile, so I'm trying to use the Legion mechanic to... I'm trying to fully utilize the Legion mechanic with some of the new V-Series support to get the best results compared to like using the Bloom. So let me get started. So I have the starting with the V-Series Trailing Rose, which is the main grade 3 to use with the Legion grade 3, the Maiden of Rambling Rose. So these two together would make a 24k attacker. Trailing Rose's effect is when placed on Vanguard or rear, call 1 plant token, or when it's placed on Vanguard, call up to 2 plant tokens. And then act ability, Soul Blast 1, call 3 plant tokens, choose 3 of your plant tokens and they get 5k each. And then Maiden of Trailing or Rambling Roses, when placed Soul Blast 2, when placed on Vanguard, Soul Blast 2. If you do, choose one of your grade 1 or less rear guards, search your deck for one card with the same name as that card, call it to rear guard, shuffle your deck. And its first ability is choose a card from your hand and discard it. When this unit Legion, you may pay the cost, search your deck for up to 2 cards of the same name as a unit on your Vanguard, reveal them to your opponent, choose 1 card, add it to your hand, and 1 card, call it to rear guard. So with these two together, if you were to Legion, you can choose either one of these and then get 2 copies from your deck. 1 goes to your hand, 1 goes to rear guard. So if you use this with Rambling Rose, it makes it so that, or Rambling Rose with Trailing Rose, it makes it so you can get 2 Trailing Rose, and with Trailing Rose's effect, when she's called on Vanguard, she can call 2 plant tokens, and then Trailing Rose again, when she called on rear guard, she gets 1 more plant token. So you can just swarm your field with 3 plant tokens right off of your 1 Legion, which makes it so you have 3 rear guards on top of just your Legion Vanguard. I think it's very powerful. So that's why I run. And I run 3 because if I want to call her off of her own effect, just having 2 search targets is nice. 4 was getting a little cloggy, so I think 7 for the 2 of them is nice, and then I run 3 more grade 3s. I run 2 of the Exploding Tomato. Exploding Tomato is just a great rear guard to use in conjunction with a couple of the other units to really use both of his effects together. And him by himself, he can kind of give you a +1. So retire 2 plant tokens, draw a card, and this unit gets 10k. So just kind of gives you a plus, and he has a force marker also. So you could still ride him and still get that force marker. And then Cecilia, she's a great unit to use if you're just trying to keep swarming the field with units. Counterblast 1, retire a rear guard, and you can look at the top 5 cards. You can call 2 units, or when you have a grade 3 in Soul, call 3 units instead of 2, and then get 10k to the front row, to 3 units in the front row. So it's just very good to use. She's very versatile, and she makes it so if you stay on her, if you're not seeing any of your other grade 3s, if you just keep staying on her, you can just keep swarming the field with a bunch of units off of her effect. So I run 10 grade 3s total. So I'm going to move on to the grade 2s. So the main grade 2 for most of my combos I use is 4 of Maiden Gladiolus. So Maiden Gladiolus' effect is when... So Maiden Gladiolus is Generation Break 1, Counterblast 1. When this unit is boosted, when it attacks a Vanguard, when it is boosted, you can choose one of your other rear guards and then call a copy from your deck of that rear guard's name, and then shuffle your deck. So she makes it so if you have other rear guards, when you attack with this, when it's boosted at Generation Break 1, you counterblast 1, and then you just duplicate a unit on your field, and it makes it so you can duplicate units with on-place abilities to get more tokens, or if you use it with some of the Bloom units, you can try to get some of those Bloom units off. But since I'm not using any Bloom right now, she just makes it so I can do this 7 attack combo with the Exploding Tomato and a couple of the other units. So I like her very much at 4. She's very versatile, and she's just a good unit. And 9k is not really terrible for an attack, because we could still, with a force marker, she could be 19, or even with triggers or anything, or with like boosted by a plant token. It's still very good to use. So I run her at 4. I run 4 of the Pansy Musketeer Sylvia. So Sylvia is, when placed, you can call a plant token to rear guard. Doesn't specify where, so you can call it anywhere on rear guard. And it's a Vanguard rear guard ability. So you can use her, and then call a plant token, whether she's placed on Vanguard or placed on Rearguard, and it's just very good to have. She's just a very good unit, and she's great to use with Maiden of Gladiolus because you could just keep swarming the field with her, and then her with some of the grade 3s. She's just very useful. So then I move on to my next grade 2. Currently I'm running 2 Lily of the Valley Musketeer Kaivans. So Kaivan's an alright unit. His effect when placed gets 5k for each of your grade 0 rear guards. He's alright. I mean, he's not great. I would prefer to switch him out soon. I'm trying to work in some of the bloom units with this deck so I can really utilize more strides. But he's good to have for now, especially early game if I have a lot of plant tokens. He can easily become a 20k column by himself. So he's at 2 right now. And then I'm running 1 of Little Benefit Dragon. So Little Benefit Dragon's effect is Counterblast 1, Generation Break 1. This unit gets boost till end of turn on its act ability, and then continuous. When multiple units would be chosen due to the effect of a card, this unit could be chosen for up to 5 times by an effect. So if you were to choose 2 units for a 3k boost, this unit can get 6k. So he just makes so if you keep putting boost on units with like bloom or stuff like that, or if you keep boosting units by different card effects, he can just keep stacking them on himself. So he's useful in some circumstances. Right now he's just a good booster. Nice to have behind a plant token or in front of it and boosted by a plant token. You can use it if you don't want to necessarily throw him away to like intercept. You can keep him as a back row booster and just use Counterblast to keep him on field. So those are all the grade 2s. So move on to grade 1s. I have 2 Stride Fodder, so 2 Padmini. So Padmini's effect is not used in this deck because I don't have a Ranunculus Vanguard. So I'm not using any of the Ashas or anything. So her first effect is kind of wasted. I was thinking of maybe using some of the Musketeer or Maiden of other units for like strides and triggers, but since the whole deck's not made of those, it's kind of hard to use a utility. So she's fine as just a utility stride fodder. Then I use 3 Corolla Dragon. So Corolla Dragon's effect is alright. I mean, especially if you're trying to get like a very combo heavy turn, he's very good because he can keep stacking power on himself. When your other rearguard is placed by card ability, Corolla Dragon gains 3k. So it just keeps stacking. So if you keep calling plant tokens by an effect. So if you have her on rearguard and then you like ride a Maiden of Trailing Rose, then you call 2 plant tokens. So then you would then get 6k under your Corolla Dragon. So it's just very good to have just to stay in the back row, or even call it and then go off, then pop off with your combos. So I like it at 3 right now because it's also a good good for guarding because it's 10k shield. So I have 3 Fruits Basket Elf. So Fruits Basket Elf is very good to call 2 plant tokens by retiring itself and soul blasting 1. So it's good to really try to use it to swarm the field or give like an early game push at grade 1 or grade 2, especially if like you're facing a certain matchups are a little bit more difficult, especially on rearguard support. Like if you're facing some Bermuda Triangle decks, this is good to run because you can start swarming the field with your tokens early game, so you can even still attack into their Vanguard even if they superior ride. You know, it's just very good to use. And it makes it so if you're running against Shadow Paladins, if they're trying to get a Blaster Blade or Blaster Dark turn off, they can't really do it because you have 2 rear guards they have to retire. So the next one I run is Dandelion Musketeer Merca. So Merca's probably the unit you want to get as your grade 1 ride. Merca's effect is 1 place, Soul Blast 1, call a plant token, and to the same column as this unit. And then her secondary effect is when your other rearguard is placed in the same column as this unit gets 3k. So if you have her in back row, you can call a plant token in front of her and she gets 3k, so she's an 11k booster even if you desire to retire the plant token. Or if you just leave her in the back row, she can keep adding up power if you keep calling units in front of her. So she's good to use in some combos. She's good to use behind Vanguard. She's just a very useful unit to use. And by herself, she can create an 11k combo if you Soul Blast 1. So or sorry, 16k because you get boosted by a plant token. So she just makes makes good columns by herself for the cost of a Soul Blast. It's a very useful unit. Good Vanguard ride, good rear guard call, all around good unit. So I'm going to move on to my grade zeros. So I do run the V Series starter, only because it gives me an early draw, just gives me some early hand advantage. I really like that. I'm thinking of maybe using Ida for like the name copying grade zeros, but for now she's good to use. And if I ever switch this to a Musketeer build, she'd be a great Vanguard to use. So I run three stand triggers. So I have 2 Sansan Tomato and then 1 Watering Elf. So Watering Elf's effect is just soul charge this unit, and then you get to give one of your units +3. So she's a nice unit to use to start building up your soul, as well as maybe if you want to keep it behind so that your next turn when you soul charge her, you just give a unit 3k power. And she's a stand trigger, so if you do trigger check her, you can stand one of your rear guards and make it higher attacking column, which is very good to use. And then Sansan Tomato is probably the best trigger. His effect is Generation Break 1, Soul Blast 1 and retire this unit, draw a card, choose one of your rear guards and one of your vanguards, and then increase the chosen vanguard's power by the chosen rear guard's power. So it makes it so you just like add whatever your rear guard's power is to your vanguard. So running it in a Force Clan is very great to use, because this right here, this rear guard would be 14k power because it gains the 10k the whole turn. So when you use Sansan Tomato's effect, you're basically like giving your vanguard this power and the force marker also. So if you're using it on a grade 3 or grade 2 unit on your rear guard, it makes it so you're increasing your vanguard's power by like 20 to 30,000 depending on how far into a combo you are. And if you use 2 of them, it makes it so your vanguard could attack for like 80 or 90,000. It's just a very powerful unit to use. And he also gives you that draw, so it's almost like a +1, even though you got to ditch some resources. So then I run 5 crits, so I have 2 of the V series crits, and then 3 soul charge crits. The soul charge is just to get more stuff in soul, because this deck runs through soul very quickly, especially with the new V era stuff. It doesn't counterblast as much as it soul charges, or soul blasts. And then the V series crit is just to have more pressure on field and get more guard in hand, especially if I draw into it. And then I go 4 draw trigger perfect cards. So I just thought about this earlier, and I might switch a couple of these, or maybe all of these, to a grade 1 perfect card, because the grade 1 lineup's alright. It's not completely set in stone. Some stuff can be moved around, but this is great to have because this is a Force Clan, so you don't really get to recycle Sentinels. You have to like worry about your perfect cards, and since it's a draw trigger, you get more draw on the field, so you get more hand advantage. Especially early game, if you draw into it, it's very nice. Or if you damage check it, you can still get a draw off it, and that increased power is very nice to have. But the problem with this is, since it's a grade 0 and it's a trigger unit, you can't use this with your stride effects or with your Legion, or well, you can use it with your Legion, but your stride effects where they say put 5 or more normal units back into your deck from your drop zone. You can't target this because it's a trigger unit. So, but if it was a grade 1, you could target it as one of your normal units and shuffle it back in deck. So that way you would actually be able to start recycling your Sentinels. This way, if you play it like this, you can't recycle these. These are basically set in stone. I mean, you can recycle it on Legion, but you can only Legion once. You can continually use that stride effect to shuffle units back in deck. And half of the strides don't even require you to put 5. They say maximum 5 or minimum 5. So you can shuffle as many back as you want, or as little back as you want if your like drop zone's very little. But those are normal units. This is not a normal unit. So that's why I'm thinking about switching this out for a grade 1. I probably will, because it'll be a little bit more competitive that way, especially with the Legion, but we'll see. Because if I do start running the other, if I start running the Maiden ofs triggers, and start switching this deck to more of a Maiden of deck, I'll be able to utilize more trigger effects that way, and the grade 1s will be underutilized. So that's what that is for now. And then I run 4 heal triggers. So these are all V-era heals, but I'm thinking of maybe including 1 or 2 of the counter charge, soul charge heal triggers for the bind effect, because counter blasting is underused in this deck, but when you do use it, you want to have a fair bit for your Maiden of Gladiolus effects, or if you are using it, there's no real way to recharge it, because your strides that you use, you have to put in bloom units from your drop zone to your deck. And since I don't really run any bloom units currently, it's I can't really do that much counter charging. And with the soul charge, it makes it so you can actually do more of your V-era effects. So we'll see. 4 is fine for now just because of the shield and the power. And so I'll move on to the strides. So the strides are not set in stone at all. The strides are actually very finicky. I'm still working on them. I couldn't really decide on any good strides because this deck doesn't really utilize Bloom at all, and a lot of the strides don't really work with a lot of the V-era support. So my first stride I use is Heat Elemental, just because it unflips one of your G zone, and you get to attack with it. So it's a free unflip. So right after you use him, you'll be at Generation Break 2. And it's on attack, so you can use it and Generation Break 2, and then use Generation Break 2 effects in the battle phase with the Maiden of cards. So very useful to use, but currently I might bump him up to 2, just because he's so useful to have. Since I don't use that many of the Asha strides and stuff, because I don't have Asha. And then I have Verano. So Verano is the only stride in this deck that's actually 4 of that's really good. That's amazing. Verano's effect is Soul Blast 1, and then Persona Flip. When this unit is placed, choose 2 cards from your hand, call them to rear guard, and then you get to choose as many rear guards as you do as you have Verano unflipped in your G zone. So if you stride first into this, you unflip a Verano, and then Verano's effect unflip another one. You get 2 Verano flipped. Or just using Verano, you get 1 Verano unflipped. So you get to search your deck for one, or for however many Verano you have unflipped, and you call them to rear guard, and then those units get boosted until the end of the turn. So if you call a grade 2 or grade 3 from your hand, and then you use Verano's effect, and then call another grade 2 or grade 3 from your deck, then you give that boost. So you can just increase your columns exponentially. And it's just a very good unit to use. And you also, with her first ability, is you also choose a card in your hand and a card in your drop zone, and you return them to deck. So she makes it so you can start recycling your Sentinel cards, you can recycle triggers, your heal triggers, you recycle combo pieces that you need from your drop zone. And if you have to throw something back in your hand, like a grade 3, like you have too many in your hand, you can throw it back in deck. If you have 2 copies of the same unit, you can throw 1 back in deck from your hand and call 1 out, and then use her effect to then call that unit out from your deck. It makes it so you can actually just combo very heavily. So I think 4 of her is actually required, especially in this deck. And then Everno is the next best stride that you have besides these 2. These are probably the contenders for top 3 strides that you have in this deck. Her act ability is Soul Blast 1. Choose 5 normal units in total from your rear guard and drop zone. Return them to your deck. Shuffle your deck. If you return 5, counter charge and soul charge 1. So she's very good, especially for that first act ability. She makes it so you can counter charge, and then you can return normal units to your deck from rear guard and drop zone. So you can just cycle stuff back in deck, especially combo pieces. And then her second effect is Generation Break 2, Counter Blast 1. Choose a card from your hand. When your unit is placed on rear guard, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your units with the Bloom ability. Search your deck for up to 2 cards with the same name as that unit. Reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So she makes it so people use her with the Pixie stand trigger to just loop it. But if you do use more Bloom units in your deck, she makes it so you can just add 2 to your hand for a counter blast and a discard. So she can refill your hand pretty easily. So since I don't use any Bloom units, she's not great for that second effect, but her first effect is amazing. All right, so I have Celine is my next stride. So Celine's effect is nice. It's kind of expensive. That Counter Blast, when this is placed on Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose up to 1 card from your hand, call it to rear guard, and that unit gets 5k until end of turn. If you call the unit with the Bloom ability, counter charge, soul charge. So obviously the second version of her effect is not great for me in this deck, but the first is great because she can call a unit to rear guard and it gets 5k. So it's a counterblast for basically giving a unit 5k. So if you're like really going for a combo this turn, you can use her and just give 5k to that unit, whatever. It's kind of good. It's nice utility for right now. The next one I use is Breakweather Dragon. So Breakweather Dragon's effect is when this unit is put in from G zone onto Vanguard, it put into G zone from Vanguard. Choose any number of normal units with different names from your rear guard and drop some. Return them to your deck. Shuffle your deck. If you turn 5 or more cards, draw a card. Countercharge 1, soul charge 1. So when this is returned to your G zone from your Vanguard, so after you stride turn, when you end your turn, when it's returned, you can return 5 cards, draw a card, and countercharge 1, soul charge 1. So he makes it so that you refill your resources after you do a stride turn. So he's just good to have. 2 is a little excessive right now. I'll probably drop him down to 1, but he's just a nice unit. Nice utility. And then my next is Jingle Flower Dragon. So Jingle Flower's effect is Persona Flip, and if the number of face-up cards in your G zone is 2 or more, choose one of your units. Until the end of the turn, it gets, during your turn, all your units with 2k for each of your, all of your units get 2k for each of the units with the same name as this unit. So it makes it so if you're using a lot of plant tokens or a lot of units with the same name, they can each get 2k for as many copies on the field. And, I mean, it's just nice to, at Generation Break 2, the Persona Flip, so you'll be at 4, at Generation Break 4, but it really doesn't matter too much. So that's only just for a placeholder, really. But then my next are my G guards. So I have Verna. So Verna makes it when you place this on Guardian, choose one of your rear guards, and this unit gets 5k for each of the other units with the same card name as that unit until the end of the battle. So since this deck is plant token heavy, it spams a lot of plant tokens. If you have 3 plant tokens, she gets an added 15k, 4 added 20k. And those are very easy numbers to get, especially with this, just by calling 1 or 2 rear guards. So she's just very good utility to have for a G guard. And since she doesn't have to counterblast or anything, she's kind of free. So right now I'm using Costa Rica. I was using the cherry heal trigger before, but I was finding that it wasn't that good. So I'll probably cut Costa Rica soon. But she's just nice to counterblast 1 and choose a G guard from your G zone to turn it face up at Generation Break 1. So she can make you at Generation Break 3 easily, which is nice in some circumstances. If you're like trying to unflip, if you're like focusing on how many you have face up in G zone and stuff. And my last 2 G Guardians are Dismal and Colburn. Colburn is really good right now because in Premium, our hand sizes are really big. So he just makes it so he gets 5k for every 2 cards in your opponent's hand. And then Dismal is if I want to protect any of my rearguards. So those are all the cards in this deck. So I'd like to hear any suggestions if anybody has any tips on how to incorporate some Bloom units or what I should look out for. And I'm still going to do some more playtesting with this. I'm trying to really optimize this to actually make this deck very competitive. Right now it's all right. I mean, I've faced a couple of decks. I've faced some meta decks, and this doesn't really keep up with the momentum of some of the real meta decks right now. But I'm hoping to fix that.